Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of our series. Today we're going to continue with the interior rendering. We're going to do a couple of more renders and I want to show you some very important concepts that we're going to be using or can be used a lot in renders for production. So when we're talking about architectural visualization or when we're doing the rendering of an interior scene, you're usually going to have to define what time of the day you're going to be doing this. And as you can see, this is the first one that we're going to be exploring, and it's called the golden hour. So the golden hour occurs in the morning, so when the sun is rising, and also in the afternoon. It's more usually referred to as in the afternoon because no one really likes to wake up super early to go and take some photos. So everyone waits until the end of the day, right? So this is the kind of shots that you're gonna have, and they tend to be very warm, very like what's the feeling, like you're home or you're about to get some rest. Like there's hope, there's happy feelings surrounding this sort of renders, and it's again very common to have them. If we take a look, for instance, at Toy Story 3 final scene. It happens in a sort of like, it's not precisely the golden hour in this case, but that's the sort of feeling that we try to evoke, right? Like we try to get this sort of like everything's gonna be alright, we have this warm tones. I remember there was this scene in Toy Story 2 with Jessie scene where she's, there we go, that's what I'm talking about. So this is what I meant. This is the sort of again golden hour sort of effect that we're going for. And again, as I mentioned, it evokes this sort of a feeling of good feelings, good elements. So of course this is not the great scene, right? Because it's if you, hopefully I'm not spoiling this for everyone, but it's the scene where she gets abandoned after the end of the day. And but it could also evoke a nostalgia and things like that. Now, how are we gonna set up our lights? Well, first of all, I have a very cool file for you guys, which is this robot room start. Now, unfortunately, I don't have this one texture. We're not gonna be using textures. This chapter is gonna be a little bit shorter than the ones that we had before, because the concepts that we're gonna be covering are, I would say, rather simple, and then we can jump onto the more interesting things for the next couple of chapters. If you've seen the intro video, then you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, this is the one that I actually did this scene probably like 10 years ago, not 10 years, like 7 years ago. It was a really old scene, and it was one of my like first Maya projects. So it's here for you. We're gonna be using all of the techniques that we've learned so far to create a very nice composition. So I'm gonna save this scene as, so that we don't have the same issues that we've had with the other ones. Robot room, let's call this golden hour. There we go. So the first thing we need to do, as always, is create a camera, right? So we're gonna go rendering, we're gonna create a camera, panels, look through selected, and we need to decide where we want to place our camera. Remember that the camera is an actor, so depending on where we place the camera, it's the kind of like message that we're sending. In the original time, or when I did this project several years ago, a lot of years ago, the composition was meant to be something like this. But you can change it around if you want to go like this, or maybe like up here from the like stairs. You're free to do so. Now, one thing that you will notice is the fact that we don't have walls, right? We don't have walls and we don't have a ceiling. This is something that we definitely need to change if we want our lights to be as realistic as possible. Because otherwise, when we create our very nice sky dome light here, we're gonna have light coming from everywhere. And yes, this could give us a very like well illuminated effect, but I want to go for this again cinematic effect, and the more control we have over the lights, the easier it's gonna be. So I'm gonna create a couple of planes here real quick. I'm gonna create this one real quick. Here's your quick tip: if you press E and click, you can select discrete rotate so that this snaps. Probably knew this already, but for those of you that did not, there you go. We're learning what's the word? We're learning modeling stuff as well. So this is going to be our back wall, or right wall, and then we're going to have another wall right around here, and we're going to have one final wall. Oh, one final wall right here. Make sure it does not overlap with the little arc that we have there, just so that we get a couple of nicer shadows. If you're doing this, by the way, if you ever do some of these techniques while using a render engine, like if you want to do this in Unreal or Unity or stuff like that, things change a little bit. For instance, those engines don't really like things to be completely thin. They don't react as well with the lights. So you would probably want to have something like this. Now, here's one thing that I can do. Even though I do want to have all of these walls, I can save all of them in a render layer, or in a display layer, sorry, and just turn this into template. And once we render, we just turn this on and that's it. Now, here's my tip for choosing a good HDRI for when you're gonna be doing golden hour stuff. It's perfectly fine if you go here to, for instance, to sunrise sunset. You're gonna find a lot of this. It's perfectly fine to select one that has like the exact tones that you're going for. But as you can see, it really changes the way things feel depending of whether or not we're in the nature, rocks, in a city. Like things change quite a bit. Like this sunset in the Chalk Quarry looks very good. I usually like selecting images that have the tones that I'm going for. For instance, like this, the sky is on fire. And I usually like to go for images with soft shadows. And the reason is, if I want to add long shadows, which is what we're going to be doing, I'm going to have more control over it. Because if we were to select sunsets like this one right here, like this Cape Hill, it already includes this very hard, long shadows. And it's going to be very, very difficult to move the light around to make sure it matches exactly what we're going for. So in this case, I think since we're going to go for this very nice, colorful sky, this one's really good. This overcast, pinkish orangish sky. So let's download this real quick. Let me get my downloads here. And this one's also going to be included, of course, in your source images. You can download it again, or you can download a different one if that's what you want. And yeah, I'm just going to select this one right here, my sky dome light. We're going to go into our color, and we're going to select a file, and we're going to input the file, which is the sky is on fire. There we go. Let's select our camera again, let's call this shot cam, and let's go panels and look to select it. Now we need to decide about the focal length. Remember, the focal length is super important. It's another way in which we can control our stuff. So give me just 1 second, guys. So with the focal length, we're going to be playing around with a low focal length. You never want to go super low unless you're going for like a super extreme. Like if you go to 8, it's kind of like a fisheye lens, and I mean it could work for certain types of scenes, but not for this one. So let's go for something like an 18. I think 18 it's good. No, actually that's a little bit too much. Let's go with a 24. There we go. 24 is a little bit better. Now, since we're already thinking about like the composition, we also need to think about whether or not we want to have a little bit of what's the word, depth of field. Is that something that we're interested in having here in our scene? And to be honest, maybe yes, maybe just a little bit of focal like a depth of field, but not yet. Let's take a look at how this looks first. So I'm gonna save real quick. Make sure to set up whatever you're working with. In my case, a GPU. I'm not going to change my samples right now. I'm going to keep them low. And I'm just going to say Arnold and render. Now, I know that throughout the series, I have not actually made use of the initial advice that I gave you guys of bringing these things or playing with the elements with a really low resolution render. That's because I want to make sure that you guys can see as much as possible. But again, if your computer is struggling, try rendering really low and then upping up the size and the samples as required. One very important thing, we need to bring this back. We can keep this as reference actually, and if we keep it as reference, it should be working. We should be able to see this. There's a lot of light though. Am I missing something? I feel like there's a lot of light. Let me delete this layer. I'm not sure it could be affecting the way this is looking. It shouldn't though. I'm not sure if this is actually responding in what I just showed you or I just mentioned about Arnold. First of all, let's grab our HDRI and let's rotate it so that the sun is actually coming through the window. So we have a beautiful look at the sunset. There we go. We do have a very big window, so that could be it. That could be the factor here. But I feel like we should have a little bit more depth. I'm going to grab all of this guys right here. The initial walls that we created. I'm going to control E to keep them a little bit of an extrusion. Let's see if that helps. Because it could be that light is bleeding through. Let's do render, update full scene. It could be the light is bleeding. There we go. Yeah, so light was bleeding through the planes, and we're getting this. We were getting this like super lit surface, and that's not exactly what we want. So as you can see, we are getting this very nice soft light into the scene, but we definitely need to help the foldings a little bit more. So here's where we can use the portal light again. I apologize for my dogs. I usually record at night when they're not making that much of a mess, but it seems like something's out there. So we're going to use this portal light, and if you remember from the like haunted hallway that we use, this portal light is supposed to help us, or supposed to help the image here. Let's update the render scene again. It's supposed to help the photons like get into the room. You can see, yeah, there is a little bit of something there. So I can definitely see some of the light going inside of the room. So let's go to the samples now. I'm gonna go to adaptive sampling and enable this so that we can see a little bit more. And I really don't want to bring the exposure up. I know we can grab this guy and bring the exposure to something like a 4, and I know that this is definitely gonna, yeah, like it's gonna add a lot of light into my scene, but I feel like this is not the right way because it's gonna overexpose, especially the image, and we might get some weird results. So I am gonna expose it a little bit, probably like a 2, but not that much. There we go. This is like the soft light that we're getting from the ambient. Like if there was absolutely no light to turn on our scene, this is the sort of like bounce light that we want to have. Now I'm also going to turn off the what's the word, the visibility of this thing. I don't like seeing this thing because, as you can see, it's really overexposed, and it's going to give us a really weird result. And let's talk about what kind of images we can have, right? So if we go for let's go sunset CD window, right? Like if we can try to get like what's the kind of like sort of images that we would see on a sunset. We can grab something. Like imagine that we're looking literally through the window and see what we would be like looking at or taking a look at. Something like this seems fine. I'm just gonna save this image, and I'm gonna save this on our image folders because we're gonna use it. Oh, I hate those formats. So you can grab again any sort of let's do something different. Let's look sunset CD skyline. If we look for this, we're going to get this sort of pictures. And again, you can imagine that if we're looking through a window, this is something close to what we would expect to see. Maybe we're like one of those like super big skyscrapers. I'm trying to find something that's like not super like this one. This one's fine. It's a little bit high, like we're really high, but it's going to work. So I'm going to copy this image. I'm going to bring it into Photoshop. So let's paste this image. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to blur it. So I'm going to say filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Quite a bit. Not a lot, but just quite a bit. Something like this. And we're going to save the scene. And of course, I'm going to save the scene on source images. And that's a JPEG file. And we're going to call this skyline. There we go. You can do this at the very end and in the post-production part of things. But it's sometimes like cool to have this in here already. So I'm going to create a plane. Just make it really big. I'm going to assign a new material, and this is very important. On the Arnold options, we're going to assign something called a AI flat, this one right here. So the AI flat is just a color that receives no shadows, or yeah, no shadows. There's no illumination or anything. It's just literally a flat color, just the texture. And we're going to append this one right here. So if we press number 6, we should be able to rotate this around and position this. Let's go to our camera, panels, look to selected. And we can position this plane, this plane right here. Is this the one? Oh, I was in the wrong section. There we go. So we're going to position this plane right there. Let's go back to our shot cams, panels, look to selected, and we can grab the plane. We can scale it up, push it back. There we go. Let's move the composition down a little bit. And that's it. Now, very important, on this one, we're going to go to render stats, and we do not want to cast or receive shadows. Okay, we don't want that. We do want to be invisible refractions. That's fine, but we don't want to receive anything. And what's going to happen now, if we render, update full scene, is that image is going to be like exposed at the intensity that we had, right? So as you can see, that's exactly the same amount of color. There's no more light. Even if we expose the HDRI super heavily, this image would still remain at this exact element. And as you can see, it looks quite nice. So as a backdrop, it really works. This is a perfectly valid way to add this sort of images to your compositions. Usually, again, this sort of thing is done in post-production, but if you feel like it feels weird or you don't like the composition or something, this is a great way to do it. Now, how do we get more light into the scene? Like we want those sort of like long, nice shadows going into the scene. This is where we're going to be using one of our area lights, right? So well, actually, yeah, let's use the area lights. So let's go Arnold's lights, and we're gonna use an area light. We're gonna show you another light. You can actually use the old Maya like directional light, but what I don't like about the directional light is that the angle of the shadow doesn't look as good, and we don't have as much control over things. So I prefer working, you know, a little bit more naturally. Now, how can we fake a sun, right? Like, is there a way to fake a sun? And the answer is yes. If we make this thing really, really small, remember, the smaller the object, the sharper the shadows are gonna be. And we like rotate this thing around. Let me get rid of the screen rotate now, so that we have this sort of really flat, long shadows going towards like that part of the wall. We're gonna increase the exposure here quite a bit. And we're gonna start seeing how this looks. So 25 is way too much. Let's bring this back. So 10, 15. 15 is working a little bit better, as you can see right here. We definitely need to work with the spread. So in this case, we want the sun to just like give us this very nice long shadows that we're seeing right there. 15 is also too much. Now, I think this scene is not in the real world scale, so that might be why these numbers are way, way, way too big. Let's go back to something like a 12. 12 looks a little bit better. We're definitely going to use temperature. It's definitely going to be a warm temperature, like a really nice warm temperature. Or if you feel like you can match the color of the element, you can turn this off and go to like to the color. Like maybe we want to go for this sort of like reddish, pinkish, sort of like interesting, what's the word? Sunset. Now let me bring this back, push it to the side a little bit. There we go. So now, as you can see, we're gonna get these very nice long shadows on the objects that are very, like, they're very close to what we would expect from a sunset. I think it was a little bit too much, so I'm gonna bring this back. There we go. And I do think the shadows are a little bit too harsh. Like normally, yes, with sunset we get harsh shadows, but I like when the border of the shadow is a little bit soft. So I'm gonna add a little bit of softness to that border right there. Maybe we can rotate this a little bit more so that we get a little bit more light on the coffee table. Let's get the shadows a little more like this. There we go. And we can increase a little bit of exposure. No, not that much. Probably something like 12. There we go. Now let's bring the temperature down a little bit more so it's warmer. And that's it. We get this very nice, cool looking, what's the word? This very nice, cool looking golden hour effect. Now, once we have this, this is where we can actually start thinking about, okay, what kind of lights would we have on a setup like this? Like I can see this light right here, like a lamp. I can see this other lamp right here, and that's when we can take some decisions. Like maybe, okay, it's the afternoon, and I'm gonna be reading a magazine here on the coffee table, and I want there to be a little bit more illumination. I want to have an extra source of light. So maybe I'm not gonna turn on all of the lights, but I would definitely like change a couple of things, right? So for instance, here I don't remember modeling a light bulb, so we're gonna get a sphere right there. It's gonna be a big sphere. Remember, the bigger the shape, the softer the shadow. So it's gonna be a big sphere. We're gonna go Arnold, lights, mesh light, color temperature. I think I'm gonna keep it white. I think I'm gonna keep that one white. Let's go with like a 10. And when we render, what we should have right here, let's stop this real quick. And always remember to update the scene whenever you create a new light or you create a new geometry. It's important to update the scene, otherwise we're not going to get the result that we want. Let me pause real quick. There we go. So as you can see, this is close to it, and this is one of a very common mistake that a lot of people make. They don't like to exaggerate things. They're like, well, isn't the sun supposed to be the most like intense light source in this scene right now? Yes, if we were to measure them, right? But if we're taking a photograph or if we're doing this sort of stuff, I would expect this lamp to be quite illuminated as well. So maybe 10 is a little bit too much, but we can keep it at 8 and see like a really nice light contribution here on the couch. Now, again, if we want to go for this sort of like warm, nostalgic kind of feel, then yeah, we can definitely make the temperature a little bit lower, right? Like if you want to go super low, I think we're gonna like this is gonna fall more into the super warm effect, but it could be one of the like a good interesting result. There we go. Now, since we already have this globe, we could duplicate it, but I actually don't recommend duplicating elements or lamps that you are using light mesh with or mesh light with, because it could cause some issues. So it's better if you make them from scratch. So for instance, this one right here actually would benefit more from a sort of spotlight effect. So that means that I would go Arnold, area light, and I'm gonna be using this area light. I'm gonna press a V and snap it right there. And just position it so that it's pointing in the very similar way, and change this to a disk. There we go. Push it back, and we're not gonna see the disc, right? We definitely want a little bit of spread, or reduce the spread. And let's see how this looks. Let's try a hide exposure again. And there we go. So as you can see, this thing right here, this is one of those parts where it might be useful to set the visibility of the camera or the light to on. Yes, we do want to cast shadows. And maybe the spread is a little bit too low. There we go. Nice. Let's push this in a little bit more. Let's make this a little bit smaller so the shadow is a little bit sharper. There we go. Now it looks like a nice light bulb right there. You can see the spread over there. Let's reduce the spread a little bit so we don't have like a super harsh shadow. And that's it. We get this very nice effect. Same thing over here. We can create like another, in this case, don't use mesh lights if you can't solve the issue with traditional Arnold lights, because the problem with mesh lights, they're not bad, but they are quite expensive. So if you can solve your illumination effect with just traditional lamps, especially if they're not going to be seen by the camera, that's usually better. So as I mentioned, same thing here, just a disk. Let's use this, make this a warm color. Let's do 6. We render. There we go. Look at that. Super nice clean effect. Nice. I like that. As you can see, we're building our very nice scenario here. Now, what other things would I expect there to be on this one? And I know we're going a little bit like longer than usual. I want to try to keep this 3 setups in the same element. So one of the things that we are missing here is some sort of light coming from this side. And whenever that happens, I always like to ask my students, what would you expect someone in this apartment to be watching, right? And of course, that's a TV. So we can go Arnold, lights, add an area light, and bring this area light towards the scene like this. So this is gonna be like my TV, right? Let's make this a super big TV. Spread should be set to 1, and the exposure, let's start with something like a 4. And what's gonna happen, as you're about to see, is that now there's gonna be a lot of little samples going into the scene. Yes, we can increase this thing even more, and there's gonna be more like information coming from there. We might need to push this thing a little bit further back. But if we were to use color temperature and make this thing blue, you can see the sort of effect that we would have. Even though we're not seeing the TV, I would probably increase exposure. There we go. Even though we're not seeing the TV, just having that sort of information there, like the fact that there's light coming from that specific section, lets me know that there's more than meets the eye, right? So one of the big secrets of art in general is not showing everything, like just letting the audience kind of like guess and imagine what other things are there on the world. Now, I do feel that compositionally wise, this feels a little bit empty, this area right here. So something that we can do very quickly, let's just grab this desk, duplicate it and move it over here. Maybe move a couple of these elements towards this area, and there we go. That way the room doesn't feel as empty. Now, here's a very cool thing that I want to show you, and that's the fact that you can actually add any image that you might imagine into the TV. So I'm a huge fan of games, and I love fighting games, and I love when a character is doing like an ultimate attack, right? I'm a huge fan of Street Fighter as well. So if I look Street Fighter Ultimate screen, I'm gonna be able to find this sort of hopefully I'm gonna be able to find like this sort of thing. There we go. That's Ryu doing his like the big Hadouken, right? So I can grab this image. I'm gonna save this one on our images folder. Oh, not that one. Here. So source images. That's fine. Street Fighter Ryu. And if we go to the TB, like take a look at the colors that we have right now. And if we go to the TB, we turn off the color temperature and we use this image on the color file here. What's going to happen is that this TV is going to behave as if it's showing this image right here. So as you can see, it does change. Now, since there's a lot of black colors on the image, we might need to bring the exposure quite a bit up to make sure that we make up for it. But if you are using like some sort of like a white or orange or green or whatever color you might imagine, we are going to be seeing that sort of stuff here on the image. So I know that right now it's a little bit difficult to tell the difference, but believe me, it's there. It's totally there. Now, if you've ever been on this sort of lofts, you're going to see that usually they're quite a bit illuminated. But now I'm definitely going over time. I thought I was going to be able to finish this information a little bit faster. But don't worry, I'm going to stop the video right here, guys. And in the next one, we're going to talk about some additional lights that we can add to make this whole home a lot more comfy, a lot more interesting. So hang on tight, and I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.